Hey everyone, welcome back to BW Audio Programming. Today is going to be the third part of my Polyphonic FM tutorial series. Hopefully you saw the last two parts. Pretty much today we just need to clean everything up, put it into a GUI, and add the last couple of parameters. But just to refresh you on what we're building, this is going to be the final product. And it's going to be a polyphonic synth, which we've already dealt with all of that stuff, filter and everything. And so today what we're going to be adding is this pitch bend control, which can be controlled with the MIDI keyboard. Let me do that. As well as this stereo effects and a couple other mappings for stuff like the mod index, so that you can turn this into a full-fledged instrument if you have a MIDI keyboard with you. So here's where we left off. If you remember, this is all of our FM processing happening within the MC gen right here. Over here we have all of our note allocation, which we basically receive our MIDI note information, and this takes care of allocating all of the voices for us. We send some of the output to the MC gen object and the other to the ADSR. So what we are going to start doing now is adding the pitch bend wheel and eventually the stereo effect. So the first thing I'm going to do is the pitch bend wheel is pretty easy because we get a pitch bend output from the MIDI parse right here. So let me grab that. And if you remember in that original example, we had a little GUI object that represented the pitch bend wheel. So we're going to get that with a slider. And what you can do is just send the pitch bend info directly into that. And now if I change the pitch bend wheel on my MIDI keyboard, you can see that automatically updates like that. But this is useful because then you can also use your mouse to control it as well. So that's how we're going to grab that. And what we're going to want to do with this is send it into our global frequency value. So this is what's controlling our frequency. So we simply need to multiply these values all by the output of our pitch bend. So the way we're going to do that is first we need to format this properly. Right now we're getting values in the range of 0 to 127. But in order for this to work, we need to scale this into the range of -2 to 2. Or whatever range you want your pitch bend to be, but usually -2 semitones is pretty good. So first we're going to subtract it by 64 so that we get it in the range -64 to +64 or 63. It'll even out in the end, so don't worry about that difference right now. Then we're going to divide that by 32 to get it in the range -2 to 2. Perfect. And then we need to turn that into a signal. Now we don't need this to be a multi-channel signal because we're just going to apply the signal to every channel in the multi-channel signal. It's going to be a global effect basically. So we're going to do that. I'm going to send it with another send tilde object. Or I should name this pitch bend. And then what we want to do is instead of going over here, because this is in range -2 to 2, we're actually just going to add this to our MIDI note value, which we're getting here with these signals, values like 60, 57, and all that. And we're instead just going to do that there. So actually we don't need to send this at all because it's right here. So what we want to do is duplicate all of these signals so that we get 10 and then just add it to the MTOF object. So you can duplicate a single channel signal with MC dupe and then specify how many you want to duplicate. And that is going to turn this signal that goes from -2 to 2 into 10 signals that go to -2 to 2, and that is going to go into our MTOF object. And you're probably thinking here that we should add this to the MC_sig object, and you could do that. Nothing wrong with doing that. Or if I make that MC Cool. You could do this. That works for sure. But it's actually, you don't need to, because with signals, if you just plug multiple signals into one inlet, they will implicitly add at the inlet. So if we do that, that's all we'll have to do. And so now we should be able to hear that working. Let me turn this up. Perfect. And if you don't have a MIDI keyboard controller, then you can also just use the on-screen GUI slider as well. And perfect. So that's it for the pitch bend. Now the last thing we want to do is add that stereo effect. And this is kind of a cheap little thing I created just to get a stereo effect. If you know about what's called the Haas effect, it's basically a thing you can do where if you have one mono signal, you can give it a stereo effect by duplicating it and then offsetting the samples a little bit. So I don't want to explain it too much at the moment. I'm just going to go ahead and create it, and hopefully you can kind of understand what's going on. So I'm going to make another gen object. This one I'm going to name Stereofy2. And what we want to do with that is first grab a live.dial so we know what we're inputting into it. We're going to turn this into a mount because it's going to be a relatively arbitrary value. And then we're going to take a signal input from here, and I'll show you exactly what we want to do with that Haas effect I was talking about. Oops. So as I said, the Haas effect is when you take a signal, duplicate it, and then offset the phase of the signals by just a little bit, and it kind of tricks your ears into thinking they're coming from different sources, even though they are exactly the same signal. So if you do it too much, you end up delaying your signal, and I'll show you what that sounds like in just a second. But what we're going to do in the actual gen object is grab the delay, and that's going to delay our signal. And then we gotta mix that in with the initial input. So if I grab a selector object, because we're gonna want to turn this on and off, give it 2 inlets, and here's what's happening. So we're gonna send our output signal here, then we're gonna have a toggle, which is gonna go into our gen object to turn it on and off, and that will go into our second outlet. So basically here we're going to choose whether we want the delayed signal or just the raw signal. And if you get the raw signal and send it in with an equal raw signal, it's going to be mono. I mean, even though the signal will be stereo, it's going to be perceived as mono because the exact same signal. So that's why we are going to have the option to delay it a bit. And the way this delay object works is, first, let me grab another inlet. Your signal comes in here, and then this argument specifies how many samples you want to delay that signal by. So all we're doing with this object is we're going to take a signal input and delay it by a certain amount of samples. Now, if you do it by too many samples, it'll actually sound like a delay. So let's say your sample rate is 48,000 samples per second. If you delay it by 48,000, you're going to get a 1 second sample delay. And actually, let me go ahead and do that just to show you what's going on. So this is going to be our delayed selection. This is going to be the unaffected selection. And then we take our toggle input to control it. And actually, better add 1 to that. And cool, so that'll turn that on and off. And then this is going to be the value where we specify how many samples. But as I said, I just wanted to test 48,000 sample delay to show you how that works. So let me give this a hefty range of 0 to 48,000. Cool. It's a percent right now, but don't worry about that. We'll send that into there. And now if I turn this on, play something, and do that, You're not going to hear anything because I am duplicating the first outlet from this live.gain. So the second outlet here is going to give us the second channel there. So let's see how that sounds. Perfect. So you can hear that that's having a delay effect already. And that's because I have this set all the way at 48,000 samples. But that's a bit too much for what we want to do. But you'll see if I turn this down, let's go to half. Now it's still obviously too much, but if I keep going, it gets less and less. And now at these low values, you can't tell that it's being delayed at all, but you still get that wide stereo feeling. So if I turn this all the way down to 0, it'll sound mono again. But as soon as I turn this up, you start to get that stereo effect. So let me give this a good range. Let's see. I'm going to want this to be, we're just going to call it 100%. And then we'll say the max delay is going to be 1,000 samples. So if I do that now, and actually we want to grab this one. So now if I do that, still get that clear stereo effect, but now even at the max you can't tell it's delayed at all. But cool. I think that's just about it. Yeah, so that's all the functionality we had in our original example. And the last step is just going to be cleaning it up, putting it in presentation mode, so we have our full-fledged synth. So let me grab all of the parameters we're going to want to see. Just going to be these two, this toggle, amount, the spectroscope, these 4 dials, these 2 dials, all of this stuff over here. Going to want the key slider and the pitch wheel, and I'm going to press Command-Shift-P, and that will add everything to presentation. Now I'm going to go to presentation mode. We see that's scattered everywhere. For a backdrop, I always use a panel object. It does nothing but creates a GUI panel. I'm going to change the color to black, give it a little border, and now we can start adding these to make it look like a synth. So I'm going to put the key slider. We want to include that in the background. Now I'm going to create a couple more panels to get that white backdrop. Just to refresh you, this is kind of what we're going for that. So I'm going to make a couple more white backgrounds so we can see the dials. You can also change the color of the dials, by the way, if you want, but that kind of takes a second. So I'm just going to make a couple panels. These are going to be white. Make a border for those. And let's see. So we want this to be at the top. Move this over here, include both of those in background, send that back. Cool. So we had modulation parameters here, ADSR and filter there. Key slider will come down here to make that big enough for the length. Cool. So there's the keyboard. Over here is going to be the pitch wheel. Shorten that, kind of like a MIDI keyboard. Then up at the top, I'm going to comment this so we know that this is our FM area. So this is our carrier waveform, so let me label that. Then we have our modulation frequency controls. The 2 modes are right here. I'm going to make that vertical. So yeah, this is our modulation free frequency. Here's the ratio dial, as well as its corresponding detune dial. Over here will be the mod index. That's pretty important, so we're going to give it its own little section here. And then let me extend this so we can put our output there. And I'm going to give it its own panel as well. Let's see, and then our filter section will go here. Name that filter. Filter frequency and resonance are up here. This is for the stereo. Grab all of these dials for the ADSR, give it a title, and I can actually shorten this, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. That's for the stereo. Yeah, may as well save some space and make this like this or something. Or actually, I think we can do this. Yeah, that works. So we'll go up like that. Just gonna highlight everything. I'm gonna highlight the backdrop. Oops. Forgot a piece. Alright, and then up here is gonna be that stereo effect. So I'm just gonna call this Stereo-Fi. Amount dial. Turn it on. I'm gonna flip that. And actually, we want this to be at the bottom. So let's highlight these, move them up. Slap the easy DAC down for a little output on and off. And cool. So that should be it. Let's give it a test, make sure everything sounds good. That's good. Ratio. The free mode. Okay, I need to fix this spectroscope, so let me go up and do that. The reason the spectroscope has these 10 dots here is because it's now a multi-channel spectroscope and will display each 10 channels that's going into it, but I just want to get the output channel. So that's going to be from MC Mixdown. And now if we go back, perfect. Filter's working. Let's try high pass. Turn up the mod index. Cool. Stereo-Fi. And the pitch wheel. Uh-oh. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the full synthesizer. I'll probably gonna release this as a Max for Live device too, so if you don't feel like building it, you could just download that if you want. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you found it worthwhile. And let me know if you've had any suggestions for other ideas and stuff you'd like me to check out.